I'm at the point now where I am filling all the cracks with the wood filler, and I just mixed this up myself with Gorilla wood glue and some sawdust that I have here from this particular wood. I just got some dark one sawdust right now that I'm using to fill in all the cracks here, the darker in the darker area. So a bit tedious task, but it does pay off in the end when you get a nice finish. All these cracks gotta be sealed, and I gotta come back and sand everything afterwards. When it dries, it's going to be a little bit darker because the wood glue is a light color right now. So when that all dries up, I expect to see a little bit of darker color left behind. So yeah, not much to do but do this and let it dry for at least 24 hours before I come back and do some sanding. Well, I've allowed this workpiece to dry now for about just about under 48 hours after I filled it with the filler, and you can see all the dark patches on here. Now it really doesn't look that great anymore because I went and put all that filler in there all on the fingers and everything, but as you may remember, there was like a big split, big crack in here where I made that mistake with the saw before I started shaping my fingers. I added in all of the knuckles and all of the fingernails and stuff like that. When I sand this down, it's going to create some detail. If you look in the back of your fingers, you do like that, you can see those lines in the back there. So, and fingernails as well, the edges where the fingernails are. So all those details are going to be left behind after I sand the wood down. And it's going to give it some more definition, more details and stuff like that. And I also took time to fill that hole there that was from a knot as well. This usually takes like a hole like that usually takes probably in excess of 4 days to actually cure properly. I already cut my angle back a bit to have this sit more like back here that I was explaining before. And I tried it with my globe. The globe is actually sitting quite securely now. And they're still not comfortably where I'm happy with the center of gravity. So I'm still going to make a flat base to attach to the bottom. So to do that, I want to sand this completely flat and where I can put it on a base and glue it down. You want something to do in this time of COVID 19 pandemic in the world right now to like today's I believe March 19th 2020, the big 2020 come in with a bang, I tell you. So yeah, now's the time to get creative and sit down and take your time, work on a project. It might be gardening, doing something in your house, or just as well trying to do an art project. But get creative, people. Don't sit around doing nothing or playing video games or surfing the net or driving yourself crazy with all this stuff going on around the world. Keep yourself safe. Practice hand sanitizations and all that kind of stuff. But importantly, be creative. Okay, time to take the workpiece over the sander and give it a sanding to flatten it down. It's going to be a little bit noisy in here pretty soon. Have to just do a little bit. I don't intend to bore you to death with noise from a belt sander. Okay, to make sure you get a nice flat surface going here is to just take a ruler and you put it on top of your workpiece or underneath your workpiece, and you just slide it across. Hold it up against the light, however, the workpiece. And what you're looking for is to see if there's any light coming through under the ruler. Because if there's light coming through under the ruler, it means that there's a low spot somewhere. Okay, in my case, I'm doing it in two directions, back and front, plus side to side. So I'm pretty satisfied with that. It's nice and flat. So next step would be to sand all the fingers and stuff off. So I'm going to start by using a rough sanding paper. This is from a sanding pad, and this is 120 grit. I'm going to be using that to bring down the bulk of the roughness, and then I will use something finer as I go along. I'm going down to I think probably a 220 grit. And my aim here is not to get it completely smooth, but just reduce the filler down to the surface of the wood itself. Okay, so I'm using the finer sandpaper now, the 220 grit. I've got all the bulk of the wood filler off and just sanding it down, doing a little bit more refinishing of it. And what to do after this is just to work on the base. Okay, so I'll finish this up. And that's probably going to be it for today. This is the fourth day working on this. Not consistently, of course, but I pretty much put at least 4 or 5 hours in each time I came to work at it. Okay, so all the sanding has been completed now. It feels nice and smooth after the finishing sanding. The next step is to make the base for it. And for that, I'm going to be using a piece of wood I got from my neighbor probably about 2 years ago. This is, I believe he said it's mahogany. He had this sitting at home for a while, and it broke in half, and he decided that he was going to give it to me because maybe I'd have use for it because it's been sitting with him for years. So what I'm going to do is make my base from this. Usually when I get, piece of wood or something that I think it's, has a special purpose, I just leave it, for a while until eventually, I don't know, it kind of says, okay, well, this is what I would like to be turned into, so to speak. Prime example, that piece of cherry wood. What I'm going to do is fashion my base with this, and to do that, I am going to be using some white, just normal printing paper first, and I'm going to trace out what pattern I want on here first before I start drawing it on the wood. So just put it on here. And I think what I'm going to do is probably keep with the curve that I currently have in the wood. Make it a little symmetric. So I'm just going to leave my pencil on the hand for now. And just kind of trace around to a certain point at least. I could freehand this, but I'd like to keep it as closely as possible to the workpiece in terms of shape. So I'm at the point where I can no longer follow that, so I'm going to trace it just freehand from now on. Okay, so it seems like I have the general idea of what to work with now. But I don't want to remove the workpiece yet. What I want to do is make sure I trace out the workpiece itself. So I'm going to trace that out so I know exactly where it needs to sit. Once I remove the workpiece, I gotta remember exactly what positioning I had in mind. Okay, so that's about it. What I'm gonna do from here is just copy that down to the board. I think I could move this away now. So this is what I'm left with. It's like a circle, almost a circle, more of an oval shape. I'm gonna take my knife, and the first thing I'm gonna do is just get some landmarks here, just in case the paper moves on me. Actually, I'll just take a pencil and just put some landmarks. That way, if it moves, I know how to realign it. So line up 4 spots. Okay, and I'm gonna take my knife and I'm actually going to just trace where each thing is. Later on, I'm gonna come back with my pencil and just trace the line where I have my piece of wood scored, and that'll give me my pattern. So if you're gonna do this as well, make sure the mark that you leave with the knife is deep enough that you can see it on the piece of wood afterwards. Otherwise, this is going to be all in vain. Your drawing is going to be destroyed, and you'll have to imagine your shape all over again. I think that's all around, all the way. Yeah, that was all the way around. Good. Now I can see where my mark is. I'm just going to outline it with the pencil. Just follow right around where we got scored with the knife. Here's my inner circle. Now this is just for referencing, of course, because when this gets sanded, this line's going to disappear. But just visualizing it, I can see exactly where I need to go. So I'm not too concerned. Okay, so I'm going to take this over to the bandsaw and we're going to cut the shape out. Okay, so that's our shape. And notice I did not cut on the line, like the outside line, because that's going to be left behind for sanding. So when I get to sand it, I will sand it to the final shape, which would be up to the line. Well, finish sanding off this this piece, the base. And one thing I notice about it right away is how finished it look. Gotta say that's not a look that I want. It looks too manufactured. And having spent all this time working on this, what I don't want it to look is like manufactured. And if I put the hand on it like this, you know, you've got something sculpted, and then you've got this really nice smooth finish down here. I don't think it lends too well to the piece that's on top of it. So what I'm going to do is take my carving chisels to it, and I'm going to change it up a bit. Now it's important to have the top of it anyway up here smooth for when I'm going to be gluing this piece to this piece. I'm probably going to have to rough it up a little bit with a little coarser sandpaper. But for now, what I'm going to do is figure out a way to make this piece down below look a little bit more interesting art-wise. And I think what I'm going to do is perhaps chisel down like the side here going down to about maybe half the height, right? I'm gonna go to the side, and then around back here on this side now, I think I'm gonna do the same, but instead of going half the size, I'm gonna leave this part back here. Gonna leave this here the same height and just bring it down like this. Bring it down to that height. So I'm gonna have sort of like a drop this way going back here, and then as it's going there, it's just gonna be a bit of a rise coming back here. So we're gonna play with some lines and see how that turns out. Right here where it starts curving that way, right here is where I'm gonna put my line. And instead of curving around, it's going to be dropping down, right, to about half the height. It's all about playing with lines here. Creates a lot more interest. So I'm going to draw this line with the pencil coming down. I'm just going to stop about half the way and right around the corner, right back here. And again, kind of working off this line coming back from this way, right? I want to start to imitate that curve, and I'm going to go back up. Around this way. All right? So if you can picture almost like a wave, it's a gentle slope all the way down, and then back up. I'm going to slant it, scoop it in, sort of like so. Where the hand is, that's going to stay the same height. I'm not going to actually do anything to under there. That's going to stay the same height. So most likely what I'll be doing is curving this line back as well with my chisel. Sounds like a plan? Let's put it into motion. I'm going to make a swoop down. And this wood's pretty soft. I don't really have any experience with mahogany, so I don't know if it is mahogany, if mahogany is supposed to be soft, but it's going to be pretty easy to work with, that's for sure. Okay, this is starting to take some good form right now. It's getting to the point where I need to use my other chisels, either the Swiss one or the Japanese ones, and get some really neat features in this wood. See how that looks. Looks a lot more interesting now. So I've been using my Swiss chisels to put some grooves in the wood. Just give it a little bit more interest, a little more detail. And now this is what I came up with. You can see all those grooves, those lines. Kind of looks like, I don't know, almost like a valley. You know, it's just flowing down the middle here, where just water just kind of runs off. So at this point, you know, I've done a lot to this workpiece, and there's a point at which, you know, you've got to stop. If you go too far working it, you might actually end up doing something that, you know, you probably wouldn't like later on. So at this point, I think I'm gonna call that it for today. And if I get any ideas during the night, or I wake up with any other thoughts when I take a look at it again, I'll do something else to it. But in the meantime, I'm gonna call that it. There we go. Yeah, I can't wait to stain this, because if I probably stain this wood here, I'm not sure if I'm going to do it yet, but if I do, you know, the peaks and valleys, um, they would show through more. Maybe I'll do it, not sure. And this is exactly why I'm going to give it time. Okay, that's it for today, and we'll see what tomorrow holds.